It's 1967 and we're going to talk about the big events in our social history that affected Britons. Let's look at some of the social and cultural changes throughout the year, both with surprise and nostalgia. Britain and its social, political and general history in 1967, and it was a big year for social change with new laws of freedom and changes that made a massive difference to the future. So, that's what we're going to do, but we're also going to look at music, culture, famous births and deaths all to come. So let's get on with it, 1967 in Britain and its social history. There were many social reforms in Britain this year, which included the decriminalisation of abortions, which meant that women could no longer be prosecuted or imprisoned for self-termination. The basic time rule of 9 weeks and 6 days has remained unchanged since the introduction, and doctors can still be prosecuted for not complying to the commonly known rule as the 10-week. Before the Act, some women were even mistakenly wrongly prosecuted for even having natural miscarriages. That must have been terrible. Up until this time, before the Act was put into place, women were having illegal backstreet abortions, which were unsafe and being practiced in homes of non-professionals at times, and obviously not using the right sanitizations. This dangerous procedure was causing many deaths of young women, which pushed people to protest to get this act into place. This change of the Sexual Offences Act of 1967 meant that in England and Wales only, that it was no longer an offence for homosexual acts, but the law had changed would have its restrictions. The law would only allow 2 males in private over the age of consent, then being 21. But it would be 10 and 12 years later when Scotland and Northern Ireland would legalise its Homosexuality Act. But if we went back to the 1500s, it was called buggery, and the act was there to punish people by death. Later on in years, the crime had gone down to leading to imprisonment, but it was still not good. So things had moved on, although attitudes took longer to change in the UK. But there are still countries where homosexuality is very illegal. Right? Before the act was put into place, there were underground bars. They were raided by the police, and offenders, as they were called back then, were arrested, humiliated, beaten and abused and charged. Under Harold Wilson's government, people had begun to use the phrase the permissive society with this new legislation. However, it was still illegal to be gay in the military services up until the year 2000. People were found to be gay or any LGBTQ offence would be dismissed without pension, without dignity, without respect. Albeit Rishi Sunak did make that major apology. Far too late. On a lighter note, this was the year that we lost Radio Caroline, the most famous offshore pirate radio station in history, along with many others owing to the Marine Broadcasting Offences Act, which was banning stations from transmitting, which apparently coincided with the introduction of the BBC's Radio 1 channel. The British Broadcasting Corporation had started 4 channels in the same year, radios 1 to 4. Ironically, Radio 1 started playing the exact style of modern tunes that had been previously played on the pirate radio stations that it had previously refused to play. Disc jockeys from the former private radios, such as Kenny Everett, joined the BBC. These channels were formerly called Light, Third and Home, and I can remember seeing those on those old radiograms. Now, BBC Two started its first colour broadcast, with Wimbledon tennis being the very first programme showed in colour. Green and white, really. The first local radio station opened up this year with Radio Leicester, getting its revenue from advertising. Still with music, the Beatles released their Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album using double-track recording. Great selling album was attached to the phrase "The Summer of Love." The mono release is what the collectors want to pay more money for, which is unusual for the time, but fans do say that the mono version has a very different sound to the stereo release. It was the best-selling album of the year, spending 22 weeks at the top of the UK album charts. The best-selling single of 1967 in the UK was by Engelbert Humperdinck with Please Release Me, Let Me Go, selling nearly 1.4 million copies. The Christmas number one was Hello Goodbye by the Beatles. Now, music was always a cultural following, which in many cases set the fashion and changed the attitudes of many young people. I wonder if it still does that today. Still with music, I know it is music, but the UK won the Eurovision Song Contest with Puppet on a String with Sandy Shaw, the woman who took her shoes off to perform her songs on stage. Ireland came second with If I Could Choose by Sean Dunphy. Do you remember that? No. Films in 1967 will see the highest ratings with movies such as The Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier and the film Bonnie and Clyde. There was no individual best movie back then because they were categorised by genre. A Man for All Season won an Academy Award, and The Jungle Book was at the top for kids' animation. It was a year that we lost Vivien Leigh, the English actor, with movies such as Gone with the Wind and A Streetcar Named Desire, just to name two, and that's because I can't think of any more. And the Beatles' manager, Brian Epstein, passed away due to a recorded accidental death on alcohol and sleeping pills. Former Prime Minister Clement Attlee also died in 1967 on the 8th of October. 1967 was also the year that Noel Gallagher from Oasis and politician Nick Clegg was born. Both men certainly made cultural changes with Britpop in the 90s, and Clegg, I'm not sure what he did really. Let me know in the comments. Milton Keynes, formerly a village in Buckinghamshire, now known as part of the Newtown strategy to build more homes to combat housing shortages in Britain and its conditions. New towns were a big part of how we would live and where we would live. These new towns were planned with local facilities, bringing new communities from the cities that had bad housing, and they were desperate for decent facilities after the war, which had damaged and destroyed many homes. These homes were modern, bright and clean, albeit many new towns were unwanted by former village locals, as they were not looking forward to the social change brought into their backyard by this influx of people. Norwell Roberts was the first black officer to be appointed by the Metropolitan Police in this year. He was born in Anguilla in the West Indies in 1946. Norwell, I hope I've pronounced that right, attained a promotion to the level of detective sergeant. He had followed in the footsteps of his father, and eventually becoming a police officer when he came to England. Banking. 1967 saw the very first British ATM, the cash point. Barclays Bank installed the very first automatic teller machine in their Enfield branch, which was promoted with a TV advertisement featuring Reg Varney. It was apparently the very first customer to have ever used one. Reg Varney, a comedy actor, very well known for On the Buses and the films and the sitcom. Enfield was chosen due to its wider pavement, so would get easier planning permission to install, as queuing wouldn't obstruct other pedestrians. Did this change begin the closure of high street banks in years to come? Well, it certainly was the beginning, wasn't it? 1967 was a great new year for inventions. Angel Delight was introduced this year, along with a Big Mac from McDonald's, not yet available in the UK. Also the Twix bar and the invention of the mini cassette dictating machines. Let's go back to Angel Delight. Does anybody remember the butterscotch flavour? And if you do, did you like it? Let me know in the comments. 1967, as I have mentioned, was the year coined as the permissive society, which could have a connection with the contraceptive pill. As this year, the pill, as we all knew it back then, and still probably know it today, had changed with the introduction of all women being able to use it. In 1969, when it was launched, it was only for married people, but in this year it was relaxed, thus giving women more freedom with their reproductive decisions. The Summer of Love. Although not performed in the UK, the headline news for UK viewers was focused on the world's very first heart transplant operation in South Africa by Dr. Christian Bernard in Cape Town. This was the first year, though, that UK hospitals would have intensive care units monitored by 24-hour staff. Economy. James Callaghan, with his pound-in-the-pocket announcement, had devalued the pound against the dollar by 14% in order to improve UK economy. Many thought that this was a particularly bad move and felt that prices had increased due to this move, and inflation had averaged at 4.6%, and those registered unemployed was an average figure of 487,000 during this year. A lot of people were not happy, and I imagine a lot of people will want to comment about that. Please do. Television. Trumpton, the programme for kids, was launched on BBC One for the first time. It was set in a fictional county of Trumptonshire, so that was very well thought out. We were also introduced to the Forsyth saga, along with The Man in the Suitcase and The Prisoner, set in the town in Wales, Portmeirion, with that balloon thing floating all over the place. Exciting times, eh? The BBC also shows Caroline Hersey in colour for the very first time on the test card transmission, supposed to be for engineers to test the colour composition and clarity on the TV screens. The test card was introduced to assist them, mainly used though when stations had nothing to put on. TV back then would close down at midnight or thereabouts and would have breaks of transmission throughout the day. The best-selling toy of the year was the Spirograph by Dennis Fisher. The magazine Top Pops was launched, and it would evolve into the more remembered publication known as the long-running Record Mirror. My apologies for not including sport, but there was a technical and staffing problem. I just didn't know anything about sport. Well, there were some events in 1967 that affected us Britons, and I hope you've got some memories out of it. Hopefully some good ones. And it is amazing to look back and see just how different the world was. Anyway, that's 1967 dealt with, and all I can say is thank you so much for watching and putting up with my stutterings and bits and bobs that I get wrong, but a lot of you people have been so kind, so kind, with your comments. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a year-by-year account from 1967 until we all get bored. But if you got bored already and nobody watches it, then I'll try and find something else to do. So that leaves me just to say thank you so much for watching, and bye for now.